the Every Day is a New Day podcast and live show, the inspirational show about moving forward and choosing to be more of you, transmuting the self-doubt and stepping into courageously aligned confidence in who you uniquely are. My name is Kim O'Neill. I'm a twice certified transformational confidence coach, Reiki master, best-selling author, and former crime analyst who now helps empathic, heart-centered individuals shatter the noise of self-doubt, find clarity on what self-love really looks like, and the courage to be peacefully grounded in who you've always known you are, from the inside out. Join me for the live shows on Facebook and YouTube, and visit KimO'NeillCoaching.com for more info. Let's get to it. All right, and welcome to the Every Day is a New Day show again. I am so excited to be here with you. Whether you are live on Facebook or on YouTube, say hello on the comments. Let me know that you're here, where you're joining us from, and of course, as we go throughout today's conversation with another amazing guest who's actually a repeat guest, let us know what questions and comments you have so we can engage with you throughout the show. With that, I'm going to just get right to bringing up today's guest onto the screen, and welcome Dr. Hassan Tetteh.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good.
Good.
Pleasure to be visiting with you once again, and so happy to be a repeat guest.
Yes, it's an honor because I love what you're doing and who you are. And so for those who didn't see last year's conversation with Dr. Tetteh, we spent an hour talking about what he's up to, the work that he does, what he's all about, and it was awesome. And today he has an update for us. And I want to just give everyone some background, and I want to what's the phrase here? Do you give you better justice or whatever with your background, because you have such oh my gosh, there's so much about you that I really just touched on some nuts and bolts of who you were in the last conversation. And I want to share a little bit more with our audience if they haven't yet met you. So for those just meeting Dr. Hassan Tetteh for the very first time, he is a U.S. Navy captain and associate professor of surgery at the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences and an adjunct faculty at Howard University College of Medicine. He is a National Academy of Medicine emerging leader in health and medicine and a thoracic surgeon for MedStar Health and Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. He leads a Specialized Thoracic Adapted Recovery STAR team in Washington, D.C., and his research in thoracic transplantation aims to expand heart and lung recovery and save lives. And so in a nutshell, for everyone, he is a heart and lung transplant surgeon. He's also has 3 master's degrees, a TEDx speaker, was named a TEDMed Frontline Scholar, and received the Ali Sheridan Award by the Thoracic Surgery Foundation for Research and Education. And to top it all off, he is a devoted husband and father. Okay, Dr. Tetteh, the reason why it is so important that I share all of that with everybody is because all of those accomplishments and accolades, everything about who you are, that's not what stands out the most. What stands out the most is your heart and how you are here to serve people. And so I hope everyone got that just from hearing his bio. And today we are going to talk about his second book in the Art of Human Care series, which is The Art of Human Care for COVID-19. Dr. Hassan, what is going on and what's been happening in your world since we last spoke?
Wow. Well, the same thing that's been happening in everyone's world, COVID-19 has happened. And it has, certainly changed the landscape for so many of us. And for me, in particular, it's been quite a challenging year. It was a year full of anxiety, of fear, of stress, and certainly new beginnings. And I think that very early on in the beginning of 2020, sort of at the onset of the pandemic for us here in the U.S., the spring of 2020, I found myself, I think much like many of my colleagues and perhaps many of your guests, is sort of in this, funk, wondering what was going to happen, what was coming up, what was going to be next, and how would we get through all of this. And I was, for good, bad, or indifferent, possessed with all of this information, not only from what I was seeing in the hospital, but more importantly from my background and sort of being one of these avid studies and read sort of pupils and students of pandemics. So I read about all these pandemics in the past. I had all this information, and now we were living through a pandemic. But, existentially, I was feeling pretty stressed because of, things that were going on in our life. We have a lot of family in New York at the time, and as you recall, that was one of the epicenters for the pandemic initially. We had people that were hospitalized that were close to us. Eventually, had family members that passed away, so that was really sad. My wife was furloughed from her job. Our kids were at home and somewhat stressed and trying to adapt to this new normal of being on teleeducation. And the hospital it was a lot of uncertainty and unknowns as to how we were going to take this all. So I found myself really just stressed out. And you and I visited earlier, and we talked about the art of human care. And I realized that what I was really in search of and what I really needed was, in fact, the art of human care. I think I came to the conclusion that my funk was hopefully going to be fixed with embracing the 3 pillars of the art of human care. I had to apply some of those lessons to myself, finding purpose again, personalizing what was happening in terms of the experience of COVID-19 for me, and then developing some partnerships with those around me, my family, my friends, my colleagues, associates, to sort of get to a better place. And I thought that, I had planned to write another book in the series. It wasn't COVID necessarily, it was for another theme and topic, but I thought it was very appropriate, and this is how it all came to be. And I was so fortunate, and through serendipity and happenstance, found some brilliant artists that helped contribute, and what emerged was really not only for me a labor of love, but hopefully something that I feel and really pray will be therapeutic for many as we emerge from the pandemic and sort of try to find a new way forward. So that's what's been going on. There's been a lot, but my story is not unique from anyone else's. I think that we all have been faced with some challenges during this time. Fortunately, sort of a new day is ahead, and brighter days seem to be ahead of us now.
Your story may not be unique, but your perspective, I believe, is. And that's another reason why I really wanted to go a little deeper into your bio and your background, so people can get a well-rounded perspective of who you are and what you bring to this whole conversation about the art of human care for COVID-19. And of course, even before the COVID-19 book, you were already talking about what does it really mean to be a healer. Mm-hmm. You don't just teach people how to do surgery. You talk about the art of healing. And that really showed up, I noticed, as I was reading the second version. It's definitely in the first one for sure, but it's also really here in this one because you go deep into talking about the value of purpose in this one. There's a huge emphasis of purpose on this one. Would you like to please say some more about the value of purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. So the value of purpose was really important for me, sort of in this discovery of what was happening for all of us, right? We were all faced with lots of questions, what's going on, people around us, loved ones are passing away, people are getting sick, we're scared to go out. And you're trying to find and reconcile what was going on, not only in your life, but even outside, right? Thinking about people that lost their jobs. They had to really find a new purpose. People whose jobs were redefined in this pandemic had to rediscover how it was they were going to sort of manage and move forward. And so one of the things I try to espouse in the book is that for me, purpose has always been one of these things that is often discovered and often realized in the act of serving others or helping others. Like your purpose, and having this platform and helping so many people is really an act, and it's really a service of helping others. Your purpose is to bring these people together. And I find that people are always wondering, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? Well, you find your purpose when you start to, I believe, help others or do things for others, whether you become a teacher, you become an artist, you become, a CEO or a leader of a company, or you're simply just a parent, or you're a friend, you're helping someone. And in those times of helping others, you kind of have this purpose sort of emerge and sort of bubble up. So writing the book became a purpose for me because I felt it was important to help, as you mentioned, provide this perspective that I had, which I think was really unique. So true, your assessment of my perspective was unique because I was a sort of a student of pandemics. I knew a lot about pandemics. I had talked about pandemics before this pandemic was even declared a pandemic. And then I was working in the hospital seeing patients. But then, sort of on a very personal level, I had family and loved ones that were, succumbing and suffering from the pandemic and unfortunately losing their lives to it. And as I talked to other individuals, and I had an opportunity to talk to people, all across the country, and I mentioned this in the book, there was one colleague of mine who I really, respect. He's been my executive coach in the past, who was living at the time and still is in Oregon. And at the time when I talked to him, we were catching up. I was definitely in a funk, and he immediately recognized it. He's very perceptive, and he said, "What's wrong?" I said, "It's this COVID thing." And in his world, COVID was really not an issue at all. He was in a very remote, nice and beautiful place in Oregon where they had literally no cases. So it just was bizarre to him that there was this big hubbub about this thing called COVID, when in his world nothing was happening. And it dawned on me that, it was a matter of time before he would experience it, maybe not to the extent that we had, but it would become something that was a lot more of a threat than what he was experiencing then. And I thought that perhaps writing the book and providing this perspective in this different context would help people that, no matter what stage in their engagement or sort of continuum with COVID, in terms of where they were, they would find something that resonated with the stories that I tell and the perspective that I tried to offer.
Yeah, it's such a pivotal time in our lives today, and
Right.
You definitely touch on how there is no going back. That there is no. You mentioned about people who say, "Oh, I can't wait for life to get back to normal." And
Right.
how there is no going back to what was normal back then. So go ahead.
That's not because I have this crystal ball. It's just because that's exactly what happened in previous pandemics. The world fundamentally changed with almost every pandemic we have, and they fortunately only happen, every 100 years or so. Really big global pandemics, much like the one we just experienced.
Right.
And if you look at the political sort of world, look at the world through an economic lens, through a social lens, through a technology lens, you find these dramatic changes that have happened. And again, this is, akin to what we're experiencing now. And so, yeah, it's not to suggest that, we don't want to go back to a normal and go back to how it was before. But the reality is, I don't think that humankind can go back after a pandemic because it so changes the world in such a way that the world is invariably different. And what really I appreciated through my writing and through talking to people and really through the only experience that I had, the reason why I think the world is so different after a pandemic is because, and this is really the key, we've lost so many souls in such a short period of time. And it's when those people are gone from our lives and from the world, and the things that they contribute, the stories that they have, and the contributions they've made, for them to be no longer with us when they were with us just a few short months ago, that fundamentally changes the world. Now, people are passing away every day in the world, but not because of one singular thing. There was a time and depending on when you looked at the timeline across the last year, where COVID was the number one cause of death in the world, depending on where you were geographically. And if you stop and pause and think about that, that's an amazing statistic for something to have, a deadly disease like this. And when those people leave and depart our lives, the world can never be the same again. And for that reason, that's really why fundamentally the world has changed, because so many people left the world in such a short period of time, and they're not with us anymore.
Well, and what you mentioned in the book, and also I believe what you addressed at one of your book launch events, which was really fun to go to, by the way, was it's not just about the doom and gloom. Of course, I mean, yes, there's been a lot of heavy emotions around all this, but it's because all of this unexpectedness of the pandemic that really also helps us to laser focus on, okay, what is the true meaning? What is the purpose? How am I using this to support me in moving forward and make life even better moving forward? So anyway, so I love that you bring that into the book, and it's not just simply we've had a pandemic and that's the end. You're saying, no, this is how we move forward. That's what I hear. So
yeah, absolutely. Every day, that you kind of wake up, is really this new day. No pun intended, right? And what you think about, at least I did, and I think many people have gone through this, if they're still experiencing this, you kind of start to have a bit of a more, like you said, focused perspective on what's really important and what really matters. And that's why I really felt it was important to sort of convey these stories of hope and of triumph, and to also really share with people what has happened in humankind when we have been faced with pandemics. We are a resilient species, and we have been able to overcome and in many ways get to a higher and better place after these pandemics. Many have attributed the Renaissance, the Great Renaissance, for which so much has kind of emerged from works of art to enlightenment, having been the product of many years of, many people suffering from the Black Plague. And many say if it wasn't for the Black Plague, there wouldn't have been a Renaissance. And if it wasn't for the Black Plague, you wouldn't have equalized the social the sort of European social strata that existed, and sort of equalized the level playing field that made it possible for so many more people to sort of acquire, a better, existence in life. And I think that this is going to be one of those times as well.
That reminds me about a story that you told in the book, and I believe you told it actually in both books, but it was very relevant. It's the story of how in 431 BC, the Peloponnesian War, the Spartans conquered Athens, and you talk about Athens. For those that don't know, Athens was huge. Sparta. I'm not the history buff, by the way, but so Sparta was small, and so how does that make sense? But you talk about their spirit being crushed because they had gone through a plague.
Yeah, their spirit was crushed. So, prior to writing this book and prior to the pandemic sort of being this big thing, I had an opportunity a few years ago to go to the National War College to, one of the masters you talked about was a master's in national security strategy. So I was definitely a fish out of water. I was the only physician, the only doctor in a class of some talented, miraculous, unbelievably, phenomenally gifted officers and senior government officials. And here I was, the doctor, right? And every time we'd be, we were studying these great campaigns of the past, whether they be the Peloponnesian War, the campaigns of the World Wars, the great wars in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, strategy, and all those things, I would always look for the health angle, because as a physician, I can't help but have the bias that for me, health is always one of these quintessentially important things. And without health, one always has, a handicap, because you can never really fulfill, what your purpose is unless you really feel healthy. It's sort of the Maslow's triangle, right? Food, shelter, health. And then you start to get to the, pinnacle of self-actualization. So I would tell my colleagues, hey, we talk about all these campaigns and these wars, but, health is always a very important thing. And if you look at the decisive factor for why one side won or another lost, oftentimes it was because of their inability or ability to combat or to deal with a threat of a disease or some sort of, health threat. And so when you look at the Peloponnesian War, which is a classic war that we spend many, many weeks studying, you look at Sparta, very small, geographical sort of footprint in that, wide swath of what is known as ancient Greece. And Athens was the center of civilization. And, you know, we made Hollywood movies and sensationalized the 300 and the Spartans, and they're all buff and they're, you know, these great warriors from birth. Yes, absolutely. But if you think about Athens being the center of civilization back then, how could a small area with a small population beat a great civilization like that? Well, what often is missed is that Athens suffered a great plague before Spartan decisively beat them. And during that time, they lost so many people. You know, I talked about how you've lost so many people, how your world has changed. They lost Pericles, who was one of their greatest statesmen and leaders. They lost, you know, scores of people, and they really had a spirit that was crushed. If you look at the art and the writings of the time, they had people that just fundamentally stopped believing in God and higher powers. And just think about a society that was so crushed and so depressed that almost any enemy could come in and I think, you know, potentially take them out. And so that was my angle. And that was, you know, that was what I espoused, much to the chagrin of my colleagues who would say, no, it was the great strategy. It was so I think those things certainly contributed, but I would not discount or minimize the impact of the plague as well.
Aside from, oh, I think there's an echo. Can you hear that? Is it playing on your computer by chance? Are we on your computer right now?
No, I don't hear an echo.
No? Okay, maybe it's gone now. Okay. Okay. Moving ahead. Okay, so aside from purpose being something that really can support people in moving forward, what else would you recommend for people to have more resiliency in being able to come out of this a different person? Because you also talk about that in the book, coming out of this a different person than when you walked in.
Yes, I think the other thing the other two things are sort of the principles in the book again. It's personalizing what that is in terms of what it is that you sort of experience in the pandemic, what you're experiencing as you emerge from the pandemic, and what you're going to do to sort of help you to get to a better place. That's going to be a very personal journey for everyone. It's going to be different for me. It's going to be different for you, Kim. It's going to be different for any men in the audience. And so while we are, because humans do this is what we do, we listen to, hey, it worked for that. That person started to exercise. That person started to read books. That person took up a hobby. That person changed jobs. That person got married. That person got divorced. You know, all of these things are going to be personal, very personal and individual for each person. So I think what's really important is taking a great inventory on what matters most to you. And I think that's really what this time has given a lot of us some opportunity to really reflect upon, right? What is it that's really important to me? Did I really like this job? Was I really passionate about this career? Maybe I should have done something different. Maybe I can do something different. So I think it's going to be a personal journey for everyone. And what I would like to do, and what I hope I did in the book, was give you some questions to think about. And really, you're going to be finding the answers that personally apply to you and your state of affairs in your life. And then the final part of it, of partnerships, was really important, because I think that we have recognized how powerful partnerships are. If it weren't for partnerships and collaboration and great cooperation, we would not have got to the point of where we are right now, where we have been able to sort of emerge. We've been able to kind of roll up our sleeves and figure out a way to still do work, even though we were sitting at home. We figured out a way to still educate children, albeit imperfect, but still do it in such a way that was different than before. And it was the great partnerships, the collaboration, the scientific cooperation that really came together in such a way to give us the opportunity to have vaccines, which have now sort of liberated, you know, at least those of us here in the States, right, to the point where we feel as if there is a possibility to sort of get back to opening up again, you know, perhaps not wearing masks and not having the social distancing anymore, because the vaccines have been able to help us be protected from something that was once before much more lethal. So I think partnerships is the other thing. And you're going to find partnerships with your own circle, you know, your friends,
right,
your family, your support system, your social network, and those attributes are going to be very important. Those connections are going to be absolutely important.
I want to share a couple of quotes from the book that I really liked. On the screen here, Darwin didn't say survival of the fittest, but rather survival of those most responsive to change. And I love that, because that really highlights that we don't have to feel necessarily like we're in a war or a battle, but rather how can we evolve through this? And I hear more freedom and openness in that. Would you like to elaborate on that quote?
Yeah, I love that quote, because a lot of people say, oh, Darwin said survival of the fittest. And it's actually not really verbatim survival of the fittest, because I think that doesn't tell the most complete story. It's survival of the most responsive to change. Like, if you think about how we all deal with stress, right? There are different ways to deal with stress and loss and disappointment, failure. You could hide under a rock. You could, abuse substances. You can do worse. You can think that it's not worth living anymore. And unfortunately, commit the greatest thing, which is, ending it all. Or you could say, you know what? This failure is not the end of me. I'm still alive. I still have an opportunity to go back and retake that test. I have an opportunity to go back and retool, get better skills, go back and try for another job. I have an opportunity to fundamentally change my career and go a different way. Maybe that major wasn't the right major for me. Maybe I could do something else. You know what? That person left me. They walked out of my life. They don't know what they're missing. I'm going to be the best version of myself, and whoever comes back into my life next is going to be so grateful that I'm here. So that is all a matter of responsiveness, right? Of responsiveness to a trigger, a change, a stressor, something that has sort of derailed our sort of path in such a way that it really focuses us on, all right, how am I going to deal with this? And I think it's in that reflection of how you deal with things that really provides us with the insight to move forward in a better way. And so that's why I love that quote, because I think it really encapsulates what life is all about. I mean, without struggle, there is no life, right? And it's all a matter of how you adapt and change to that struggle, and more importantly, how you respond to it.
Yes. And I actually love the example you gave about, people choosing to go different ways and parting and exiting lives. Maybe you're still alive and certain relationships have ended, because I know a lot of people have experienced that throughout this. And it can be a very devastating thing. And yet at the same time, one of the gifts of COVID is it's brought us all back into ourselves, and what you've already touched on, like what's important for me. Okay, this thing ended, that thing changed, I didn't expect it, and I now get an opportunity to rechart my course forward. And yeah, right now, I know that's a perfect example about relationships. I love it, because partnerships is one of your other three main points in the art of human care. And I personally believe that it's all about first partnering with yourself so that you can be a partner for others. So
Sure.
I love that.
And what we're doing right now is partnering as well, that sort of tell stories, motivate, inspire, and help people realize every day is a new day. You have an opportunity to make the best possible day it can be. And everything that kind of emerges from that is just, it's just cream. It's just cream on top of it all.
Absolutely. Yes. We have Helene who's saying amen. So yes. And I did not mention yet, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I'll say it now. We are giving away copies of The Art of Human Care for COVID-19. And all that you will contribute is paying for the shipping. And so if you would like a copy of this, I'm giving a copy to the first 10 people who say that they would like a copy, and simply email me at kimoneil@outlook.com. It is KIMNEI@outlook.com, to think about that. And I would be happy to give you a copy in exchange for the shipping cost only. kimoneil@outlook.com. There we go. I'll go ahead and put that up there we go. And okay, I have another quote that I want to share that is from the book. And this speaks to the theme of what the Every Day is a New Day show is really touching on this year. It's all about letting your light shine. And I love that you reference it in your book, not the movement, but you touch on letting your light shine. You said, nope, that's your website. You want to go there too. This is the link. This is the quote. You said, be a light. When there is light, there is hope. And will you say a few more words about that?
Oh my gosh. So I have, it's so touching and endearing that we have this sort of common thread of like being this light. I came back, and this is where it came from really, and why I have this theme that pervades through almost every aspect of my life. I came back from a very difficult deployment in Afghanistan many years ago, and it was such a trying and challenging time then. During that, many months away from family, and we saw such death and destruction, and folks mortally injured. And it was a tough time, and we lived hard. We saw really terrible things, and we took this long journey coming back. I mean, it took us almost a week to get back to the States. We were on our way back home, and we were so excited we were coming back home, but it was such a long journey to get back. And when we finally got back, we landed and we got back. We were in Camp Lejeune, so we got back to the Carolinas. It was sweltering hot as usual, and it was dark, and it was like in the middle of the night. And all we wanted to do was get our bags and just get to barracks and just kind of decompress. We were going to have to stay on the base for another few days. So it wasn't even at the end. We were getting to the end, but it wasn't quite there. And it was really dark, and they opened up the sort of quad con to get our stuff. And it was dark, Kim. Nobody could see inside, and nobody could get their stuff. And can you imagine, like, you've taken a long trip and you just want to get your luggage and just have it end. And it was like, oh my gosh, we've got all this way. We can't get our stuff and just go. And I happen to have a flashlight in my pocket. And I mean, you can imagine this whole unit just gets back. We're exhausted. We're tired. We're stressed out. We want to see our families. We're hungry. And you can imagine everything from a long journey. And we couldn't see. And I had this flashlight, and I pulled it out, and I was like, I got a flashlight. And I flashed the light into the darkness. And I mean, it was like Nirvana. It was like, the light. and that light gave us all hope. We were like, oh, thank goodness we can get our stuff. We can finally get complete again, be complete again. We can get our things and just go, continue our existence, and try and get to a place where we can just finally rest, because it was such a long journey. And I remember that time, because I remember everyone being so grateful that at the time, Hassan Tetteh had the light. I had a flashlight, and I thanked God. I was like, thank God I have this flashlight. And for me, anytime I remember that symbolic kind of, experience that I had of bringing the light into darkness, and how impactful that was for all of us that had just come back. I mean, it seems like a little thing, but it was almost like this was the capstone of a 7+ month journey of just everything was dark. And then we end in darkness to have that light. It was this ray of hope that came into hey, we're back home. We made it. We lost some people. Some people didn't come back with us. None of us are coming back the same way, but listen, there's light now, there's hope. Let's gather our things, and let's start this process of healing and redeployment, which is what we call when we come back home. And it's not going to be easy, but it was a moment for me that I'll never remember. I'll never forget. I'll always remember. And it was one of those moments. So that's kind of where that quote came from. So obviously it was a lot to write, but that be a light. When there's light, there is hope. That was really, for me, the epitome of that, bringing that hope with that flashlight at that time. It was really meaningful.
That's a great story. Hearing the echo again. Sorry. It always throws me off when I hear it. I want to acknowledge that another thing you said in this book is you talk about, you give an acronym of Illuminate, which provides more tips for people to find resiliency in moving forward. And I'll leave that for people to find out about in the book. And I am happy to see we have Martha with us, who's saying, I want a copy. Martha, you get a copy. Email me at kimoneal@outlook.com, and we'll work out the shipping, and I'm happy to send you a copy for sure. So awesome. Oh, Dr. Tetteh. Okay, let me make sure people do have your website, where they can also, of course, find more information about you and the book series. You have a third book that's coming out. When is that one coming out?
Oh, it'll be out at the end of the summer.
Okay. And is there a special, what's the title for that one?
That one's The Art of Human Care with Artificial Intelligence, AI.
There we go. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Dr. Tetteh, is there anything we haven't touched on that you want to make sure to share with today's audience?
No, Kim, you've been so gracious and generous with your time and for sharing your great audience with me and for providing so much support. I am so eternally grateful to you, and I'll always be a fan. I'm always going to be a fan of Kim O'Neill and all the work that you do. So you are an inspiration. Thank you for bringing your light to the world, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share some time with you.
Thank you. And you are a gift to the world. So thank you. I want to pop up another quote we touched on, but I didn't quite share this one. COVID-19 is collectively giving us a purpose. And I share that at the end here because I would like to just remind everyone about that. And if you haven't yet considered that, then what is COVID-19 helping to show you about your purpose? If you haven't yet ever felt that you had a purpose, which I deeply believe everyone has a purpose, and we always get opportunities in life to reframe and redirect, and this is another one of those. And Dr. Tetteh so awesomely shared that in this book. And we didn't even touch on, I've got to say a few more things here. This is not just a book that talks about COVID-19. Dr. Tetteh, you didn't want to be a surgeon when you were a kid. You wanted to be an artist.
That's right. Yeah.
And you do a fantastic job of weaving artistry. You did touch on how you have artists who have contributed their artwork to this book, but also you're a poet and you have beautiful writing in here, in addition to your perspectives and your stories. I mean, this is a great book to just, you've got just so many little tidbits and nuggets for people who like to read bite-sized things that are inspiring. This is an awesome book. So I want to make sure people know that. Okay, well, Dr. Tetteh, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate your time. I know you were coming from surgery and working with real life patients and human situations. And so thank you for being here today, taking time out of your schedule. And thank you for all that you do. And for everyone who's been here with us today, whether you were live or on the replay, let us know what you're taking away from today's conversation. Remember to go to drtetteh.com to learn more about Dr. Tetteh and his work and his books. He has lots coming out. He also has other books in addition to The Art of Human Care. And if you haven't yet joined the Let Your Light Shine movement, I want to remind you that you have an open invitation to do so. And that link is on the screen. For our audio listeners, it is bit.ly/Let Your Light Shine movement. You being you are a beautiful, bright light and an inspiration contributing to an empowering ripple effect on the planet. So with that said, have an amazing day, everyone. I will see you again very soon with another episode. If you liked today's episode, please do share, like, and comment and all of that. And I'll see you all again very, very soon. Stay right there, Dr. Tetteh. Bye, everybody.